Muy buenos días. Es para mí un honor presentarles a una persona que realmente no necesita mucha presentación. El doctor Ioannis Palikaris, graduado de Medicina General en la Universidad Aristoteli, en la ciudad de Tesaloniki, en Grecia. Completó su residencia y PhD en la Universidad de Zúrich, Suiza. Ha recibido muchos premios, ha sido miembro honorario y director de la Clínica Hospital en Hania, en Grecia. Actualmente es profesor asociado y director del Departamento de Oftalmología de la Universidad de Creta. Fundador y director del Bardinogianni Eye Institute of Crete en 1999 y actualmente el director del Instituto de Visión y Ópticas. Uno de los acontecimientos más importantes fue que el doctor Palikaris fue rector de la Universidad de Creta del 2004 al 2011. Fue presidente de la Sociedad Europea de Catarata y Cirugía Refractiva del 2006 a 2008. Quiero agradecer al doctor Palikaris que haya acudido al Congreso del Centro Mexicano de Córnea y Cirugía Refractiva. Es para nosotros un honor. Doctor Palikaris, adelante. Muchas gracias.
Buenos días. So, to say the truth, to be honored to be here in this area is a very important part for everybody which is dealing with refractive surgery and cornea and anterior segment. Latins, they are the leaders in this area in ophthalmology, with the first and most important person worldwide for the whole history of LASIK, I think, with Professor Jose Baraquer. And they say my career started in Crete 35 years ago, but the point which was very important for my life was the day that I get the Baraquer Award about 20 years ago. And this makes me and LASIK and everything which I have done in Crete very popular. So the history of correcting of ametropias, of course, is a very long time lane, as you can see here. We started with lens correction 1,500, and then 500 years later, we started with contact lenses, and then lately with refractive surgery. And when you see these slides here, which has been given from the American Academy of Ophthalmology many years ago, which pointed out a few people that have done work in the area. Of course, you recognize here this very important person here, which for me is the guiding personality in all the refractive surgery. And of course, Fyodorov, which was another person from the other part of the world, which has done a lot of basic research. Yeah, thank you. Now it's better. Now, the photorefractive keratectomy has been started 40 years ago, in the 60s, which has been developed the excimer laser, and we proved that this can be used for biological application for Tabota and Sirivas at the time. Torquay later on, 83, made the first cornea incisions. L'Esperance McDonald made the first PRK in 1988 in the United States. Almost the same time in Germany, Theo Zeiler has done the same job with John Marshall in London. But as you can see here, in America, everything happens very late, in the United States, actually. And the approval comes much, much later for the use of the laser. Now, in the beginning, everybody was very excited about the PRK because it was a very minimal invasive technique. But of course, we have some problems for the beginning on, speaking for the postoperative pain, which was an issue in the beginning, the cornea haze, the regression of the effect, and we have a delayed visual rehabilitation. If you remember, It was last about 3 to 4 months to stabilize the cornea. And all around was big discussion about the treatment with steroids and no steroids. So I think the PRK was a very good idea, but it was not very popular at the beginning because of this major problem. I mean, the management of the pain, the slow visual recovery, and the cornea haze with regression. And of course, this was a big discussion about steroids, more steroids, overcorrection, undercorrection, and on and on. At that point, many people, they thought that probably we have to remodel the tissue inside the cornea. Of course, the very popular idea of keratomiliosis or keratomiliosis site was everything based on the Barracare approach. It has been in the mind for many, many people at the time. But my idea, of course, started from the point that I was thinking we don't have to cut it all the cornea, to cut a disc. We have to have some support area for this disc in order to heal faster. And I came to the idea to the flap technique in 1989. So LASIK has an advantage in the beginning. The first US trial that started in 1994. That's been 5 years later after I have done the first patient in Crete. The FDA has very late approval and became the most popular refractive worldwide at the moment. This is my very first microkeratome I have done actually in a very small engineering department in my lab here. It's very primitive. This has been designed for the animal studies, for the rabbit model. And you can see the first opening was shaped like the hinge, not round like is today, in order to have in a very stiff corner of the rabbits an appropriate flap in order to study the healing process of the rabbit. And this is the very first keratome on the human eye I've used. This is a Polytech keratome. It has been designed for inside the keratomiliosis. And I asked that time the company to make these holes here, and I can put a plug here. And with this plug here, I can control how far the oscillation can go and cut the cornea in order to generate a flap, a hinge here in this area. And as you mentioned here, as you see here, the first opening of this keratome was not round, it was oval. And I think I have here the very first video. This is the very first eye has done. In this case, it was actually a glaucoma eye was blind, and, of course, in this first study. And you see this keratome from the side. I'm doing a very small flap here, as you can see. Sorry. This has been done in the surgery room, of course, under sterile conditions. You see this hole here. This is guiding the size of the hinge, and manually I was driven the head in and out. This time the first flap was 300 microns thick, very thick. And at that time we don't have really very high precision of pachymeters, so always was critical how thick was the flap. Sometimes it was like 400 microns at the beginning. I remember in my very first cases, I started to ablate until I saw water floating in the middle of the cornea, and I was going through. What was very exciting in this particular case, I told you, which was penetrated due to the excimer ablation, you can see here the quality of the cut. This patient was -12 patient, has been corrected in one eye with PRK, one eye with LASIK. I remember this patient still has a very good vision because he has a very nice multifocal eye, which is a very central, absolute, very nice corrected zone, and the peripheral zone still is high myopic, so the patient is amazing happy. But the PRK eye was -13 or -12, I remember, still is very clean and works much better than the LASIK anyway. But of course, those are historical issues that come 20, 25 years ago. So this was the very first flap. You see it's very thick, the flap, it's very dense. So, you know, all of you, the advantage of LASIK, of course, fast visual rehabilitation, very early stabilization of the results, minimal pain, and we have almost no haze in these cases. And everybody was thinking at the beginning that the laser is a new procedure with no limit. So we've done very high myopes at the time. And of course, this is one of my cases, which was 11 years later. I find him, you see the cornea is very clear and the patient is very happy. Even having, as you can see, for a very let's say, narrow here ablation area with a very central flattening here. Of course, this cornea, as you can suggest now, is a very multifocal cornea, and based on the pupil diameter, has a big variety here of refraction in the system. So, because of that, of course, and the high removal of the tissue, we started to have the problem with LASIK, and one problem was the cornea ectasia. We noticed that when the cornea becomes very thin, it becomes ectatic later on. Then later, in the beginning of 2000, we developed the wavefront technology, as you remember, and we found out, of course, that the biomechanics change a lot when you cut the cornea. Depends on the thickness of the flap, and you can see here some generation of high order aberration because the cut of the flap. So all these issues, they make us to think about LASIK, of course. And we came back on the surface for a while, or for a longer time, avoiding the very first problems on the surface ablation, which was pain, and later rehabilitation with new softwares, with new nomograms of the laser, new patterns, better quality, of course, of laser, new medication. All this together, of course, helps a lot to improve the first PRK results, was from 1995 to 2005 now. And of course, the surface ablation, they become again quite popular. Now, I think in the United States about 15 to 20%. It was in the LASIK era was like only 2 or 3%. But in Europe, still about 50% of the people, I think, they're still doing PRK today. So PRK, of course, is very easy. An advanced PRK with the use of mitomycin becomes more safe now. So PRK has a comeback, let's say. And I think all around the world, about 35% of the cases they are treated are from PRK again. Now, we start to deal in the LASIK group about the other parameters of the LASIK, which was the cornea thickness, of course, the ectasia, as I said, and of course, most importantly, comes the point of the thickness of the flap. And with the new microkeratomes, and particularly with the femtosecond technology today, we can control very precisely the size and the thickness of the flap, and this helps a lot on the outcome as far as concerns the predictability and also the stability. So thin flap, which is around 100 microns, become today more popular, at least for those ones that are using the femtosecond technology. So if you see here at the same time in the two procedures, you see that with a very advanced keratome, like the Cariaso Barraquer here, and with intralace, all together, you don't have really big difference at the time. It's about the same time. For those ones that are familiar with keratome, it's very simple. Of course, with the laser, you are more safe somehow today, and for sure, anybody will start to use femtosecond laser today, I think, does not use microkeratome anymore. Not because he invests so much money to buy a very expensive laser, but also for safety reasons, I think, and more reproducibility reasons. So femtosecond becomes a new interesting era. We have more and more now new laser come on, and as you can see here, the advantages compared with the microkeratome, the flap, the parameters, they are not related to any of the microkeratome's parameters, like the thickness of the translation speed of the keratome, the IOP, the cornea curvature, the cornea thickness. All these parameters, they may affect the size and the shape of the flap, which is not the issue with a femtosecond laser. So you have very predictable flaps today. With keratome, sometimes you are very thin or very thick, and you don't have any debris, of course, and you have, let's say, generally less possible severe complication. And of course, the size and the shape of the flap becomes again here more predictable. This is a typical meniscus flap with a microkeratome. This is a planar flap with a femtosecond laser, in which you can identify precisely the thickness, the size, also the configuration at the edge of the flap, which means that become very important, as you can see here, because in case you cut more perpendicular here at the edge, you destroyed less nerve in the periphery, which may affect probably the dry eye syndrome later on, or any other syndrome related to the innervation of the cornea in this area. And you can see here, of course, the quality of the cut, which is much more precise with the femto. Now I'd like to show very shortly one for the latest laser we have now in clinic with the femtosecond 200 from Wavelight, compared with IFS 150. We have also this laser in the clinic, just to show you the quality of the two laser. With what you notice, here are the parameters of the study. We have done 60 porcine eyes. We evaluate the quality of the cut, all the parameters, and I don't like to stay longer here with the laser settings, but they are quite similar. I like to show you finally that the Interlace and Wavelight, they don't have really a big difference as far as the quality of the surface. Probably very high magnification. It could be here that is a little bit smoother because, of course, it has a very the repetition rate is much higher in this laser. It's 200 hertz, but really, in the final outcome, we don't have a very noticeable differences even on the periphery. And when you compare, of course, the microkeratome, you see here that here you have the mechanical effect of the oscillations part on the edge of the flap, which is not the case when you do with a femtosecond laser. So in conclusion, I think that both lasers are working very well, and just to prove that with this laser we are now in a very high standard as far as concerned the use of this laser to make our clinical practice. Of course, the disadvantages of the system is this is a very big system. It's a big microkeratome. If you like to retreat the flaps after many, many years, you have to recut probably again because it's very difficult sometimes to find the border of the flap, or you cut more centrally on the previous cut, which you can identify then the interface. In general, you can separate the interface after many, many years, as you know. The bubble production is a problem which I think has been solved with several new designs of the separation patterns. The TLSS problem is not anymore a big problem because we are using more steroids sometimes to avoid this light sensitivity, and of course it's more expensive. But I think speaking for the future of the LASIK, I don't know what can happen in the future, but this always will be a better way to do it. We have to find it. Thank you.